Today we will be taking a look at Jordan Peterson revealing what he thinks of Donald Trump and how he once voted for him. Dr. Peterson reveals some facts about Trump which you have never heard before, so make sure to like and subscribe. Watch to the end because this will change your look on Trump, but let's check it out.
If you were an American citizen, you were here in the 2020 election, would you have voted for Trump, Biden, nobody, or a third-party candidate?
I don't know. It's very hard to answer those questions until you're actually in the situation. When Clinton was facing off against Trump, for a very long time, I felt that I would have voted for Clinton. I felt that she had at least the administrative background and the governmental experience to know what the job was and to handle it. I felt that Trump was a wild card, which he most definitely was. Then I went to this, the night of the election, I went to this Republican gala in Canada at a private club watching the election, and they did a straw vote there. And in the straw vote, I cast my vote for Trump. And that surprised me. And it was something I sort of switched on last minute. And the reason I switched, I would say, is because I thought Clinton betrayed the working class. In fact, that's why she lost the election. It isn't something I just felt. That's definitely what happened. And so I thought, to hell with you. I'd rather have this wild card in here with his spontaneous lies than have you in here with your programmatic, powered, mad, driven, pre-authorized lies. And so I don't know. It's hard to tell what you'll do in a situation until you're actually in it.
Do you think Trump as president in his 4 years also betrayed the working class?
Not in the same manner, no.
Really?
And I think Trump did some things that were really quite spectacular.
Of them. Like what?
Well, how about no war?
Well, he did assassinate a top Iranian commander who was fighting ISIS on the ground.
I didn't say anything about assassination. I said something very specific.
Yeah. I would say Trump that's an act of war.
No, it's not an act of war. It's an assassination. An act
to
of
kill
war
an Iranian commander?
I don't understand the point you're making.
Well, I'm trying to say if the Iranians killed one of our generals, we would call that an act of war. We do it to them and it's not an act of war?
All right, then I guess we have to differentiate between an act of war and a war. What you have right now with Russia, that's a war. And Trump did not engage the U.S. in a war of that sort. And so that was a signal contribution. He also established the Abrahamic Accords, which have got nowhere near enough attention, not nearer the attention they deserve. And the people who negotiated that should have won a Nobel Peace Prize, because that brings the possibility of peace to the Middle East. And that was a big accomplishment, both of those things.
Do you consider the giant increase in drone strikes under Trump problematic?
What do you mean problematic? You mean desirable?
Do you, because you said, he didn't get us in a new war, but I would consider all those bombings, which are illegal, by the way, an act of war. Do you think that those are...
I didn't say that Trump's record was unblemished or that there weren't skirmishes of various sorts. I'm not trying to paint him... I'm not trying to paint him beige, or I'm not trying to whitewash him. I'm perfectly aware of Trump's flaws and his advantages. But he didn't embroil the U.S. in a war. And you guys have been embroiled in a pointless war for what? How long now? Since the 1960s? One after another. And then the Abraham Accords are a big deal. And did he betray the working class? Well, I think that's in some sense it's a vague question. Hillary definitely betrayed the working class because she decided to go with the woke mob instead of the typical base of power that the Democrats had always relied on. So
can I give you an example?
Decision.
Can I give you an example on Trump betraying the working class? Because there's a few things you could point to. First of all, there was net outsourcing of jobs under his administration when he campaigned as the opposite. The second thing is his number one legislative accomplishment was a 2017 tax cut where 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. So those are two examples of, he campaigned as the anti-outsourcing guy. Then there was net outsourcing under his administration. And in fact, that same tax bill incentivized outsourcing. And then again, that tax bill mostly benefited the wealthy and it didn't help the working class. So that's what I mean by betraying the working class. I think he campaigned in a very populist way, but in terms of how he governed, it was very sort of standard establishment Republican, just like George W. Bush, for example.
Yeah, well, I don't have any real comments on that. Like I said, I'm not trying to whitewash the Trump administration. I'm just pointing to a couple of things that he did that he hasn't got credit for.
Yeah,
you should have got credit for.
I actually enjoyed, you were on the PBD podcast, I think it was recently, and you made a comment that you found Trump whiny, particularly over the, common refrain that he can't stop saying he thinks the election was stolen. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your commentary was like, move on.
Well, I think it's a strategic error on his part at minimum. I mean, Trump portrays himself and thinks of himself as a winner. And part of his attractiveness on the populist front was his unabashed, victorious persona, let's say. And he's the guy that gets things done, and he's the guy that wins. But apparently, the election was stolen from him. And so that begs the question, are you the winner and the guy that gets things done, or are you the guy that lets things be stolen from you? And the answer that Trump had always had was, well, I'm not the guy. I'm not that guy. I don't know who else I am, but I'm definitely the winner here. And I think that now campaigning as if he was the victim, let's say, of a plot isn't going to do him any good. I think it was probably a fatal decision from a strategic perspective because it's so off-brand. And that has nothing, that's completely independent of whatever virtue the argument about the stolen election might have. Well, I don't believe that the judiciary in the United States is so corrupt that the possibility of a valid finding on the election fraud front has been reduced to zero. I don't find that credible. And I do think, so I also think that it's a mistake on that front. And it's a mistake for conservatives. It's a real mistake for conservatives to take that route, because conservatives can't say all the institutions are corrupt and untrustworthy. That's what the radical leftists say. And populist conservatives tend to do that. And that really leaves them with nothing except maybe an appeal to public whim. And that's no way to govern. So I think that was a mistake too. I don't really think that the American people are more polarized now than they were 10 years ago. And the reason I think that is because for 20 years, 50% of them have voted for Republicans, 50% of them have voted for Democrats. It hasn't moved. It's been exactly the same. Now, this time they had Clinton and Trump as candidates, and perhaps that was unfortunate, And I also don't think Trump won the election. I think Clinton lost the election. It was hers. She had it in the bag. There were a number of things she did that were really not very bright, like play identity politics, that cost her the election. I don't think that the Americans are any more polarized than they were under Nixon. And then that was pretty polarized. Like, there was violence on the campuses. There was more violence in that period of time than there is now, and more polarization. Of course, the war in Vietnam was still going on.